Well, my friend, we are still dealing with the seven commandments as a group. As a group of commandments, before we jump into detail of each commandment separately. So last week, as you remember, we talked about the group compared to the 10 commandments of Moses. We said, just to sum up, that actually the entire group of 7 commandments are incorporated in the 10 commandments, beside the one, which is the Sabbath. We talked about it, and today I want to continue. Just a second. Well, I want to continue with this theme of discussing the group in detail, and then maybe after we do that, because we don't have opportunity to do that a lot, then we go to each commandment separately. So, but by the way, the term Noahide laws compared to Noahide commandment. If I look at the United States Congress, the famous declaration of United States Congress in 1991, signed by President Bush, that declared, the declaration there for the Congress declared or recognizes the seven Noahide laws as a moral basis of our nation. That's wonderful. United States, by this, has been actually the first country ever that to recognize publicly that the Noahide laws are base of the moral foundation of this country, because they recognize, they had a committee, they sat down, they thought about it, and they came to the conclusion that no society can exist without the 7 laws. But they picked up the term laws carefully. They don't say commandment. What's the difference? Laws can be man-made, made by man. So the Congress set up and said, I don't want to intervene with religion. Noahide laws. We of course call it commandment because they were given by God to Adam and Eve in Eden, and then to Noah and so forth. So, and what's so the difference is as implication. If I violate, if I cheat, if I have an affair with my secretary, let's say, I cheat my wife, because it's a after all, there's a law. There is a law that's the law. The country said you are married and so on, and I cheat on her. But if I see adultery as a God-given law, I not only cheat my wife, not at all. I cheat God. So that's an enormous difference in the stand, in the posture. On your posture, when you think about it, as so the term commandment as opposed to laws, I just wanted to mention that. So another point is, well, let's focus now on the order of the commandment. The order, as we describe it, is the order is one thing I want to mention before I move on. That's a very important point to sum up what we learned last time. Let's not forget a law from the 10 commandments that apply to Noahide has to carry 2 signatures, so to speak: the signature of Moses, because it's 10 commandments, and the signature of Noah. If there's any law that doesn't carry the signature of Noah, it does not apply to the nations. It's a general rule. So the Yom Kippur atonement Noach didn't say about it. So it does not apply to Noach, and so forth. Kosher food, Noach didn't say anything about it. So it does not apply. Kashrut doesn't apply in that sense to Noach. So that if you remember if you have a question, does the law apply to me as a Noachite or just to the Israel? Well, you say, is there a signature of Noach on it? No, there is not. If there's no signature of you, you need to know about it. You can clap your hand and empathize it and understand the issue of the law, of the kashrut law and so on. But it does not apply literally to you. Okay. Now, the order of the commandment. Yes, the order is, as we said, as we introduce it in this class, it's a most common order. The top is idolatry, number 2, adultery, and then bloodshed. You will know it by heart, so I don't need to write anything or to show you any slide. Idolatry, adultery, bloodshed, theft, justice or civil order, and blasphemy. That's a classical 6. And Noach added after the flood, number 7. Don't eat blood and don't eat limb torn from a living animal. There is, we'll discuss it in detail when we reach Noach's story. You will understand why Noach added the 7th one. What he wanted to achieve by that. So we have this order that I just mentioned to you, but not all authorities actually list the order, the commandment in that order. As I told you, Dr. Lichtenstein, in his book, mentioned several orders. Even the Rambam deviate a little bit. But most commonly used is this order. It also fits the book of Genesis. The book of Genesis, as we learn, actually follow that order. So that's the order. One more. So how can we remember the order without learning by heart? Just you need. If I wake you at night, you will know exactly the order. How can I achieve that? First, we need to recognize that the top 3 should be on the top, which are the idolatry, don't worship idols, and then adultery, and then bloodshed. Those 3 always come combined together, and they are on the top. Why? Because of severity. They are punishable potentially by death by human court. If you kill somebody, you are liable to be killed by human court. Adultery potentially can be punishable by death. Potentially. Doesn't mean that we do it right away. The Talmud said it almost never happened in Jewish laws, in Jewish culture. But potentially, you need to know you're punishable by death. Idolatry, the same thing. So those 3, first of all, they are severely punishable, whereas the other, like theft, injustice, blasphemy, theft and injustice are monetary retribution. They're not an issue of killing or murder or thinking or any harsh retribution like this. So there is a difference in the harshness of the first 3 as opposed to the other. One is punishable by human court, by death. They are potentially. When we say punishable by death, it doesn't mean that like the ISIS, I'm going to cut the head of everyone who committed adultery. It's not so. It's just according to the Talmud, you measure that's a measure of the degree of the severity. It's so important to keep to observe idolatry. It's so important to observe adultery. It's so important to stay away from bloodshed, from killing, that potentially you can be hung. Doesn't mean I'm going to hang you right away. But the killer should, or the person who wants to perpetrate it should know it, should be prepared to be punished. As opposed to the other, they are monitored. Okay. Not only that, they are on top, not only because they are punishable, but because we are supposed to give our life, sacrifice our life rather than violating it. What we call Kiddush Hashem, sanctification of God's name. Yeah, if I am according to the law, according to the law of Noahide law, if I am obliged, if somebody tell me kill somebody else, otherwise I will kill you, like it happened in Nazis. They forced some Jews to kill other Jews, and while they were laughing. You're supposed to give your life rather than violating it. If they force you to sleep with your sister, in the eyes of everybody to watch, and making laugh of you, making in mockery, die and don't sleep with your sister. Don't comply. Same thing with idolatry. So those three, we are supposed to sanctify our life for that. That's why the top three, they are the top. It's not so when it comes to theft, when it comes to injustice, it's not the same category, not the same artist. So not only we are we ourselves are punishable by that, but if you commit it, I mean, you sacrifice your life for that. That's the severity of the top three. By the way, Noahide laws can be forced on by one nation on the other nation. I'm repeating it. It's okay for one nation to force the Noah law by force on another nation to keep the seventh commandment, which means if I come to the continent of America and I see people being sacrificed to some god in the jungle there, in Inca, whatever, still sacrificing. It's okay. I'm actually supposed to intervene. I cannot just say, oh, it's their faith. What should I do? I should stay. I don't want to intervene. It's they believe it, so they let them sacrifice people by the sword or by fire. But it's not me, it's them. Noahide law can be forced by one nation on another nation. And that's the Rambam. And that is why Joshua, by the way, when he entered the land of Israel, it's a myth. People think that he just entered the land of Israel and he killed all the 7 nations there. No. The Talmud says, the tradition goes for generation and generation and generation. The Talmud said that Joshua sent 7 scrolls to the 7 nations, asking each nation, telling them, I am here, and I ask you, I'm going to enter this land, this my forefather land from Abraham, and I'm pledged not to touch you if you comply with the 7th commandment of Noah. Only one nation actually complied, it's a Gibeonite, and they also cheated him. That's a different story. Had they complied, he would have entered it and it wouldn't touch a hair. They would leave them alone because the only thing he asked them, live side by side with us, with peace, provided you stop offering children to the Molech. You know, for years, we thought that Molech Rashi said Rashi could believe that the Canaanite actually sacrificed the children to the fire of the Molech. They thought it's a metaphor. Rashi said, there was fire on one side, fire on another side, and the Canaanite just led the children in between the two fires. Oh, no. Archaeology, actually in Cartago, in northern Africa, which is an offshoot of Canaan, as you know, they found the Molech. And they found the statue of the Molech, and they found piles of bones that children burned. So don't tell me they were just nice people. They bring the children to the fire, like bonfire, sing hallelujah. They throw the children into the fire. So Joshua said, stop that, live with me in peace. Sacred prostitution. Ashtoreth, Baal. The Canaanite culture was full of that. That was the appeal. That's why the Israelites later on loved the Canaanite, the ones who remained, because you got the best girl in town in a sacred institution. Joshua said, stop that. And so, because it's against the seventh commandment. Joshua did not say to them, keep the 613th commandment of Judaism. He didn't want to convert them to Judaism by force, which is forbidden by Jewish law. You know, in all Jewish history, never, even if Israel was strong militarily, they never converted the people they conquered to Judaism, apart from one example of the Hasmonaim king, about a year, I think about a year, cost 200, let's say 200 BC. One of the Hasmonaim king conquered Edomite, and he converted them by force to Judaism against the Torah scholar. The Torah scholar would say, what are you doing? He converted them by force. The result is King Herod. To show you, this bastard King Herod, okay, who killed so many people. He was one of those people who were converted, or his father was converted to Judaism by force. So you see what the apple. So going back to our topic, okay, the seventh commandment potentially can be enforced by one nation of the other, not Judaism. That's why Jews never built empire. The Arab quickly, if you don't believe in this, in Muhammad, I'll cut your head. Or the Christianity spread, not sometimes, many times by the sword. Judaism, no. Seventh commandment, yes. You're right. You tell people, if your society is so rotten that you don't keep forget about idolatry, think about adultery, sexual prostitution, killing, and burning and children to the Molech, and injustice, and all so forth. If you violate the seventh commandment, I have the full right. You don't belong on earth. You cannot live side by side by me in the same United Nations. That's why I believe the seventh commandment should be placed on the corridor of the United Nations. Believe me, if I had the force, I would engrave them in the hall of United Nations for everybody to see. Not the 10 commandments, the seventh commandment of Noah. So let the whole world see what it means. They are not even aware of it. Okay. So we're going back to our topic of the seventh commandment as a group. I'll be said we can sacrifice our life for them.
Rabbi,
Yes.
can I get one clarification?
Yes.
One clarification is we've seen warfare from this nation and other nations in the West that have perpetrated a war because of another nation's, for example, Iraq, Iran, and subjugating its citizenry, murder, et cetera, et cetera. So you're saying that a nation that somewhat follows after these laws of justice have a prerogative to be able to do that, to invade another nation, to stop that, correct?
Correct, my head. You cannot stand by and let it be people executed on the poles because of some miserable sin.
That's exactly what needs to be said, because we've seen so much war
Yes.
in the last 25 or 30 years because of that, correct?
You cannot say, well, you know, I live in United States, I live in a nice society. What do I care about those fanatics?
That's beautiful.
It will spill over, and it's against the, let's think about the Noahide law. You're okay if you talk to them in that sense. If you tell them, okay, you don't abide by the Noahide law, and please take care of that because I'm going to invade you. Okay. Now, where are we now? We go, about the self-sacrifice. We said the top three are set up or set aside, or they're distinguished by the fact that I can't compare, I can enforce them on others, especially the top three. And I should actually sacrifice my life rather than violating them. Here's the difference between Noahide and Israel. Noahide, Israel are commanded to do that. There's a special Sedra in the Torah, in the book of Vayikra, that God tells to Israel, it's a commandment, a separate commandment. You should sanctify your life for my name. So I as a Jew, as an Israelite, so to speak, I am commanded to do it. Noahide are expected to do that. But they are not commanded. That's a difference. Now, in fact, there is a rabbinical debate in the literature that prevail. The last one was written not too long ago, about 10 years ago, and I have it, of course, on my library here. And the question that the rabbi asked was, are Noahide really obligated in sanctification God's name or not? And some say, no, they are not. And some say, yes, they are. So the story they bring, they always in the discussion pop up one story that all of us should be aware of it. And the story goes like this. From the story in the Talmud, the rabbi learned the bottom line, and I will tell you how it goes. In short, there was a certain rabbi, Hanina ben Tradion, who lived in about 200 AD, that he was punished to be burned on a pole, maybe even crucified, and burned for the grave sin of teaching Torah. That's the grave sin, in the eyes of the Roman, teaching Torah. For that, because he violated the law, they also forbade circumcision, they forbade other things. They wanted to annihilate Judaism from the earth. This is way before Rome turned to Christianity. This is Rome, the idolater Rome. Adrian, something like Caesar was there. Anyhow, Rabbi Hanina ben Tradion was sentenced to death, to die by the pole, to be burned alive. And to prolong his death, they took Torah scroll and they wrapped it around his body. And the space between his body and its core, they filled with cotton wool, full with water, so that the fire that burned will not kill him right away, to prolong his death. And a Roman centurion, a legionnaire, a very fat, big one, stood there. And his job was to turn the coals a little bit to the side so that the fire won't burn fast. So to prolong the death, the agony. And as he was doing his job, the centurion turned suddenly, this fat centurion turned to the rabbi and asked him, "Rabbi, would you like me to fasten your death, to shorten your agony?" So the rabbi said to him, "If I ask you that, I actually guilty of committing suicide, which I don't want to do." So the centurion looked at the rabbi and said, "If that's so, Rabbi, promise me that if I fasten your death, I will sit by you by the heavenly throne." Before the rabbi said anything, he jumped, the centurion, the Roman centurion, jumped into the fire. And both of them died. The Talmud said that he was so fat that the fire came up right away in full strength and consumed both of them immediately. So they died together. So the heavenly voice was heard. It says the Rabbi Hanina ben Tarchion and the centurion sit together by my throne. That's the story of the Talmud. And that story, the rabbi quotes in many places, prove that, of course, Noahide are rewarded for sanctifying their life for God's name, without being explicitly ordered. Israelites are explicitly ordered. So let's move on and with our topic, because we need to move on with the subject of the group. And so if we look at the group, and look, why was idolatry first, adultery second, and so on? What's the reason for that? So we said there is a halachic reason I mentioned to you. The halachic reason, because they are punishable, the top three are punishable, and we need to sanctify. They are very severe, so they need to be on the top. But there is also a logic behind the list. If you keep the logic in mind, you will never forget it. You will never have a mistake. And the logic goes like this. Don't laugh when I say that. It sounds funny, but it's not funny at all. Of course, idolatry should come first, because if you don't believe in God, there are no meaning of any commandment. So idolatry is the base of anything. So the idolatry, I understand, it should be really on top. We're talking about logical reason why of the order. Now I'm asking you, if you don't believe in idolatry, you don't believe in God's looking at you, writing down what you do, retribution and reward, what's the next sin most people would do? Think about it. And I give you right away the answer. Having an affair. 70% of a couple of United States confess that he or she had an affair, extramarital affair. Because what would stop you from doing it if it's just a matter of cheating? She doesn't know. He doesn't know. You cannot cheat God. But that's the come up is the second one. If you don't believe in God, the second one will be in numbers, would be in a population will be adultery. Now, if you have committed adultery What do you think that the offended spouse will run to you with a knife or with a pistol? So here you have bloodshed. So we have adultery, followed by adultery, obviously followed by bloodshed, because either your spouse wants to get rid of you to stay with their lover, or you want to kill them, both of them. Very common story. Now, if you cheated, if you cheat somebody, if you stole somebody's wife, committed an affair with her, why don't you steal his money? Very common thing. Together with your lover, you will steal your money, the spouse money, without even knowing. I saw it happening. So stealing is the next. And if you want to cover up, it's injustice. And if you live in society, if you live such a life that you violated all the above, you will curse your mother, because you will feel so filthy. You will curse your father and mother and God for bringing you to the world, which means blasphemy. So here we have the whole cascade. You violate idolatry, that's enough to push you down the road, slide down the slippery road. You go from idolatry to adultery, to bloodshed, to stealing, and to injustice, and curse God. This is so inherent in our psyche, this cascade, that many books actually written like that, in that value. I'll tell you just an example. You know the story of Cosby, great Cosby. He's a person who doesn't believe in God, he's wealthy, and he wanted to attract his former lover across the lake, committing adultery, and they actually ended up with bloodshed, killing, and then cover up. If you read the story go follow step by step the 7 commandments, 6 commandments. That's why he speaks to us. Why the story is so popular. Many books of Grisham that I heard on an audiobook when I was driving from Lafayette to Atlanta. Here I'm listening to Grisham's book, audiobook, and here he goes, without even aware of it, with a storyteller, follow the person who is not believing in God, and then he commit adultery, and then the killing and stealing, all injustice. It goes step by step down the road. So, and it speaks to us. That's why Grisham is so popular. And it's a beautiful book. And it speaks to us because it speaks to us, to these 6 commandments that are engraved in our psyche because they were given to us in Eden. Now, why I'm bringing it, not to entertain you, but to make a point. And the point is, Rod, do you want to say anything? Or is he gone? Rod? Okay, Rod, step out. Rod? Okay. So
just go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, if you want,
you're saying.
I like you to intervene and ask if anything.
No, I would, but you're doing such a brilliant job.
Okay, thank you. All right, God. Okay, just want to be sure that you are there. Okay, so where are we talking about? Yeah, the stumbling, the idea that you stumble from like a cascade. Once you violate one commandment, you go to follow the next. You violate the next in order, in line. The rabbi said, give an example. If you have, for instance, if you see a public leader prime minister, king, who violate adultery, okay? Pay attention to him. He's arrogant. He's worshiping himself. As because he is violating the idolatry by worshiping himself rather than God, he's so arrogant, from heaven they stumble him over adultery, over sitting with another woman, right? To show everybody how empty-headed this guy is. So because idolatry doesn't mean you bow to stone and wood idols. Worshipping yourself is a sort of idolatry. We're learning. When you are so arrogant, you worship yourself, you are the king of the universe. From heaven they stumble you off on another woman, David and Bathsheba. David was in the prime of his power. He stumbled over Bathsheba, adultery, ended up his killing her husband. And they ended up with a prophet coming to him, and he didn't rebuke him for stealing, from adultery. The prophet rebuked him for stealing. Look at the story that he tells, Prophet Nathan to David. So here you have a person who was so arrogant, stumbled over adultery. You think the whole world belongs to you, so why not cheating with taking somebody else's wife? Although technically the Talmud says he did really violate it. Let's see. The fact is that he guilty, some sort of adultery committed. Ended up with killing her husband, bloodshed. So you remember David, so you know that idolatry comes first, adultery comes second, bloodshed comes third. The prophet coming over and say, you stole her, and you committed injustice. That's what the prophet is saying. So here we have the whole cascade. And you are going to, that's blasphemy. If a king of Israel does it, where everybody see him, it's a blasphemy. If a private person does it, nobody knows. But you desecrate God's name because you are king of Israel, and your name is going to be written in the Bible, so to speak. The whole world will know about it. You desecrate God's name. So you worship yourself, you committed adultery, Bathsheba, you kill her Uriah husband, and you stole her, and you committed injustice, and you end up with severe blasphemy, the end of you. And David, of course, repented, confessed and repented. He saved his name. Okay, so a sinner can repent, of course. So that's as far as the order. So we understand now there is a logic behind the order, and a person can fall along the cascade, down the slippery road. And if it happened to David, it happened to us too. If it happened to David, the slave of God, the only three people were called slave of God: Moses, Joshua, and David. The honor to be slave of God, it's a big honor. If I'm a slave to God, I'm a slave to nobody else. David, the slave of God, did it. How much more so a human flesh, poor human flesh like me and you and he and she. To open it up, simply, everyone should know that we are on the same position. We can fall into this slippery road. If you violate one commandment, expect the other one to pop up. If you violate two, the third one will come up. be sure we are programmed to face them. God programmed us to such a way that we will surely face. You violate that, you worship yourself, you violate this, adultery, and then you probably be angered, if you think about bloodshed, and you are programmed to fall. Once you violate one commandment, the other one will pop up and challenge you.
Isn't it true that one who does the opposite, that would follow mitzvah and do a mitzvah, would be programmed to go to another positive element of mitzvah and to do good, correct?
You can climb up, in a sense, yes. But, climbing up, it's interesting. You don't have to step by step. You can reach right at the top.
Right. And how?
By repenting. If you repent, Hashem will wipe. If you repent sincerely, we talk about it when it comes to the Eden story and the tshuva and repentance. Who pardon you? We need to understand the whole process of pardoning. It comes from a certain aspect of the Shekhinah and so on. We talk about it in due course, but she is such a powerful entity, so to speak.
Right. So
you can climb up right to the top.
Yeah. So the idea is the violation of Torah law, whether Jew or non-Jew, is immaterial if one does tshuva or repents and changes their ways. Then Hashem elevates them to the highest level.
If I quote the language of the Talmud says a person who does tshuva, his sin become merit.
Ah, beautiful.
So not only you climb up clean, but you come up loaded with merit. We'll talk about it.
Beautiful. A great conclusion to the class. Rabbi, this has been one of the greatest illuminations in our classes.